Welcome to everybody. Today is the first in a series of sessions that we're going to be doing together. And today we're going to be focusing on, learning about your multilingual learners. We're going to look at some research to support language literacy and numeracy development. And then I'm going to turn it over just for a quick moment to our Maine DOE supporters or leaders.
Hi, everybody. This is Melanie Junkin. Super happy you're here with us today. Want to let you know that this is brought to you by a Title IV grant, and that I will be supporting your needs as far as attendance, Zoom links. There's a question right now on Engine access. I had told you all in an email that you would be getting access to Engine, and I've had a slight hiccup. So I will be getting you access to those recordings soon. I'm just not sure when that will be, or if it'll be by the end of the week. I also want to introduce you to my colleague, Jane Armstrong, our state ESOL specialist. And so her and I will be supporting you from this end. Otherwise, Mindy and her team at Support Ed will be handling all the content for this course. And we are so thankful to have them on board to do this for us. So thanks, Mindy.
Yeah, thank you. Just a little introduction. My name is Mindy Teach. I'm a multilingual learner coach with Support Ed. And I have this slide here where I like to use to kind of introduce myself a little bit, kind of tell you how I got to where I am today. My first experience going abroad was in France. And after that, I did a little bit more traveling. And in my experiences in being in other countries, it really dawned on me how frightening it can be to be somewhere and not know the language. It really made me think about students and schools, families, how they're trying to function in our school systems and not, maybe not being completely proficient in English. So after I came back to the United States, I got a master's degree in education with a concentration in English as a second language. At the time, I was living in Washington, D.C. So I started my career as an ESL teacher in the District of Columbia Public Schools. I was there for a little over 17 years. And it was there where I taught and then also started doing a little bit more professional learning. I did a little work with Children's Literacy Initiative, which is a nonprofit that's based here in Philadelphia, where I did some literacy coaching, and then got connected with Support Ed. And that's where I am today, where I'm doing a lot of combining of some of these experiences of mine around multilingual learners and also literacy. And so now I provide professional learning. I do some on-site coaching, technical assistance, all in support of multilingual learners and the educators that work with them. So I want to thank you again for being here today. I know that it's the end of a school day. It's January. It's probably cold. So I really appreciate you taking some time to be here with us this afternoon to do some learning. And really, I just want to thank everybody for all of the work that they do with students and their families. So before we get started, I'm sure you've already noticed that we are dropping links throughout the session in the chat. Anything that comes from Support Ed, my colleague Jasmine Singh is going to be dropping links into the chat. Anything that comes from her will begin and end with 3 asterisks, just so that, our comments kind of stand out. So you'll be able to find those. I'm sure we've all been doing a lot of virtual sessions, a lot of virtual professional learning. And I just want to remind everybody that I welcome your participation today. You can share by unmuting yourselves. Everybody does have the capacity to unmute today. You can share by typing into the chat. There may be a couple of opportunities today where we're doing some independent work. And if you are more comfortable, you can turn off your video for that. But while we are here all together in the session, just to help us create this sense of community, it's really great if people are able to keep their cameras on. So here, as I'm sure you've seen already, this is an overview of our series and the sessions that we'll be working on together. So here we are today in session number 1. And just so you know, this document is also included in the Google folder. So if you want to take a look at what's coming up, you'll be able to see that. And then just to share, we use these icons in the lower right-hand corner of the slides, just to give you an idea of either the type of activity that we're going to be doing or where you might find some resources. So if something is in the Google folder, you'll see this little icon in the corner. So let's get to our objectives for today. Today, we are going to be discussing the importance of understanding multilingual learners' academic and non-academic backgrounds to inform effective instruction. We're going to be examining some relevant research related to language, literacy, and numeracy development for multilingual learners. We'll explore some key principles of second language acquisition and some WIDA resources that support effective instruction for multilingual learners. And then towards the end of the session, we're going to allow some time for you to create your own plan to learn about the strengths and needs of the multilingual learners in your context and to apply some of the resources that we'll be talking about in the session today. So as I mentioned, and some of you were able to access our series Padlet, this is a Padlet that we're going to continue to build on with each session. So for today, right here in the first column, we have the pre-series survey, and then I also have a PDF of the session slides. Oops. And so you're able to access those if you'd like to follow along that way, or if you want to look back later on. So you will have the slides. There's also a direct link to the Google folder. So all of the resources really are here in one place. And then I just have some additional resources that you might want to access. Here is the Google folder. So if you use that link that I shared with you, you should see this image with all of the folders that show up here. All you need to do is click directly onto session 1, January 20th, and then you'll be able to see all the resources in that folder. And one of those resources is our agenda. This is document 2. I will do my very best. I see I'm already running a little bit late, but I will do my very best to stick to the agenda and give you enough time to interact with all the resources. So just to get us going, I would like you to share in the chat your name, your teaching role, your county or your district, and one reason why you chose to participate in this professional learning series. Okay, I know it takes people a minute to type into the chat there. So I see some people already starting to enter their names, their roles. Great. People are looking to deepen their expertise, better understand how to communicate. Oh, now they're flying by. Okay, so really interested in understanding the latest research. Great. Learning how to best support ML students. Great. Great. So you all can feel free to continue dropping those things in the chat to kind of introduce yourselves to each other. But I am going to get going again, just to help us kind of stay on track here. And of course, you know, the goal of the session is to think about how we're supporting multilingual learners in literacy and in numeracy. So I wanted to start out just by sharing, I'm sure you've all seen these guiding principles, but I have up here on the screen the Maine State Literacy Action Plan guiding principles. And as you're reading through that, either maybe you're familiar with it or maybe you're reading it for the first time, I want you to think for a minute if there are any words or phrases that really stand out to you as being particularly important or powerful. And you can just drop those into the chat. Any words or phrases that you think are really powerful? Okay. Oh, wow. Look at it. The first three people, all fundamental right, really stands out. A right. Yeah. Families are critical partners. Great. Yeah. Begins at birth. Okay. Yeah. A lot of fundamental partners. Okay, great. So now I want you to think about these guiding principles specifically as they might relate to multilingual learners. Is there one or one part of one that you feel is particularly urgent for multilingual learners? What stands out to you as you think about your multilingual learners? And again, now I don't know if people are still answering the first question or the second question, but still fundamental right, right? So even, I shouldn't say even, but as we're thinking about our multilingual learners, this is also their fundamental right, is to have access to great literacy. Again, that the families and caregivers are critical partners. It begins at birth. We want to be responsive to student needs, grounded in the science of learning. Yeah, really highlighting the school and family relationship, equal access. Educators need to be trained. Yes, yes. So a lot that we can take away from here and also apply to how we're thinking about working with our multilingual learners. So now let's just take a quick look at the guiding principles around numeracy. And I want you to do kind of a similar exercise. Is there anything that really stands out to you as really powerful, really important, that you really want to draw attention to? It's not just math class. Numeracy is happening not only in math class. Yes, every educator is a numeracy educator. Yeah. You need integrated instruction, high quality instructional materials. Yeah, every educator is responsible. Great. Yeah, great. And then again, just the same question. Is there anything that you think is particularly important or relevant, urgent as we're thinking about multilingual learners? Again, I see families playing a vital role. So certainly that school-family partnership is going to be really important. You need high quality materials geared to multilingual learners. Yep. High quality professional learning. Yep. Word problems. Yeah, we know we're going to need to work on some word problems. Families and support, collaboration. Yes. Yes. Community. Great. Okay. So yeah, go right ahead and keep dropping things in there that are really standing out to you. And we are going to move on and we're going to talk about understanding multilingual learners' academic and non-academic backgrounds. So just to start out, I wanted to share this image here. So when we talk about multilingual learners, when I say we, I mean support ed, we are relatively inclusive when we're talking about multilingual learners. So we are referring to any student who comes from a family that has a culture or linguistic background that's different than the dominant culture and language here in the United States. And then you can see from those circles that within that circle of multilingual learners, we have some emergent multilingual learners. And these are the students who are, similar, same background, but they're still learning English. So when we talk about multilingual learners, we may have some students who are still learning English. We may have some students who are already proficient in English. And then I like to share these charts because sometimes this is really kind of fascinating to people. When we talk about emergent multilingual learners, so students who are still learning English, it's about 10.4% of the school-age population. But when we expand that category and we think about multilingual learners, so students who are coming from backgrounds that are not American, traditional English-speaking homes, that number goes up to 22.6% of the population. So when we have a more inclusive definition, we're really talking about more students who are coming to our classrooms with different cultural and potentially linguistic backgrounds. And then I did take a little bit of information from your dashboard. You have an amazing multilingual learner dashboard, a lot of really interesting facts and information here. So we can see that here in Maine, overall across the state, the number of multilingual learners maybe is only 4.7%, but you can also see here from these graphs that the numbers are going up. The numbers have gone up relatively steadily since 2016. Okay, so somebody is asking about zooming on the slides. I don't think that's something that I can do on my end. I think maybe it might be something that you can do with some of your screen settings. And also just to remind you that you do have access to all of these slides. They're in a PDF form, but they are linked on the Padlet, so you will be able to take a look at them. So I wanted to share with you as we're going through today that all of the work that we do and all the professional development that we provide comes from our beliefs that are here in this framework for equitable and excellent multilingual education. And you can see those 5 principles here. We always start from an assets-based perspective. We think that multilingual learners learn best when they're taught in a welcoming environment that's culturally responsive. We recognize how important it is for students to be learning language and content together. So we want to integrate language and content. We also know that students thrive when they're able to engage in conversation. They need to use the language orally. And we also know that students excel when their teachers are able to collaborate and provide the best instruction for them. So let me talk a little bit about what is going to really address what we're talking about today, and that is a strengths-based approach. So today we're going to be talking about looking at students from an assets-based approach. And we know that some students are coming with academic skills. Maybe we're not always able to recognize them because we might have some confusion around language, or students might not have the language to express the skills that they have. But we know that students are coming with some academic skills. We also know that it's important to recognize their funds of knowledge. So what are students knowledgeable about from their own life experience that might go beyond what we're typically talking about in the classroom? We know that building relationships with students is really important to be able to recognize those strengths. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. And we also know that to really support students in the classroom, it's really important for us to be able to use and build on some of students' lived experiences. So I want you to think, I'm going to invite you to share another response in the chat. I want you to think about your multilingual learners and what academic information do you currently have about your multilingual learners? So right now we're thinking only about academic information. What do you feel like you already know about them? Okay, so you certainly have access information, so language proficiency data. Okay, so maybe you have a data wall, so you have scores, star data, okay, grades, test scores, okay. Okay, great. I see a lot of like standardized test information, scoring information, maybe you have some information from your intake center. Great. And then I want you to think about what additional academic information do you think might be important to know? So if you could ask for additional information, so maybe some previous school experience. Test and screener scores, background knowledge, proficiency in their first language. Yes, these are all great things that'd be really helpful for you to have information on. History, educational history. Great. So I mentioned just a little while ago, funds of knowledge, and I just want to make sure that we have a good understanding, a working definition of funds of knowledge, which is up here on the screen right now, which may be information that students have accumulated just from their own experiences. And it's really important that when we gather this information, when we're able to learn about students' funds of knowledge, that we, to the best of our ability, connect it to what they're learning in school. This shows that we're really valuing their cultural resources, and we can really make those connections by tapping into some prior knowledge. So I'm going to ask you to engage in a little activity just to kind of get a sense of how you do know your multilingual learners. In your Google folder, there is a document called Knowing My MLs, and this is document number 3. So I want you to think about the multilingual learners in your class and see if you can write their names down or type their names in. You'll probably have to make a copy of this document. Write their names in from memory and see if you can come up with at least one fact about each multilingual learner that does not have to do with academics. Okay, and then there's also a space on that document for you to note if you've had a conversation with the student about the fact. And let's just take it up to that point right now. So just take a couple of minutes. And if you're not able to access the Google folder, Jasmine has dropped a direct link into the chat, and you should be able to click right on that link and pull up the document. And let's just take a couple of minutes and see where we are. Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that as the document is in the Google folder right now, it is view only. So you will have to make your own copy to be able to type into it. Okay, and why don't we plan to take just about one more minute? Okay, so does anybody want to share any kind of reflections? I see somebody has already dropped a little something into the chat about how you interviewed your students in the beginning of the year, which is great. You already started to collect some of this non-academic data, learning about their learning style, their favorite things. That's great. So there was only one, and you couldn't list a fact about that student. Okay, so maybe that's something to think about, how we want to begin developing some relationships with students and asking some questions. So we are beginning to collect some non-academic information. Anybody else want to share any reflections? Okay, and somebody says it was easier to list non-academic facts. Great. Okay, great. And Megan is sharing that they always talk about things that they did the night before or over the weekend. So always beginning to learn a little bit more about the students. Great. That's great that a lot of people are already having some of these non-academic conversations, because this is all going to help create a complete picture of the students that you're working with. So great. I want to share just a couple of other tools which might be similar to some of the things that you all are already doing, where you can collect some additional information about your multilingual learners. And again, this is a document that you do have access to in the Google folder. You just have to make a copy if you'd like to use it. But this is a place where you can collect all kinds of information about your student, home languages, some relevant educational experience, some interests. And often when we talk about using some of these documents, it's helpful to you as a teacher, but also it can be something that you might want to share with some of your colleagues who might also be working with some of these students, so that you're sharing as much information as you can about all of your students. This one is a little bit different because this is an opportunity for the student to share some information with the teacher. And again, this one is available in the Google folder. And, if you're going to be asking students to complete this form, you just want to be really clear about why you're collecting this information, that you're using this to learn more about the student, so that you are incorporating what you can in instruction and instructing them in the best way. And you want to make sure that, they're comfortable with you potentially sharing some of this information with other colleagues and teachers. And this is just an example that we have here of a student who may have filled out this form. And you can see, the teacher has gathered some information about how the student's feeling about English and a couple of different subjects. That could be really helpful as they're planning lessons. Recognizing that school has been a little bit difficult because the student struggles to understand teachers. So certainly some really helpful information that you can gather here. So this is another somewhat similar strategy where you're gathering information from a student, but it's called I Wish My Teacher Knew. And I'm sure we could all think about different classrooms and places where we've been with teachers where we thought, oh gosh, I wish my teacher just knew something. So we want to give students this opportunity to share what they want the teachers to know about them. And this could even be written almost in like a dialogue journal kind of situation. The student can write something, the teacher can respond, so that there's this ongoing communication and sharing of information. And then this last one that I'm going to share here is called Identity Portraits. And this is an opportunity to connect maybe some artwork with some writing. And you can see the image, the picture here on the left. The student has kind of split themselves in half. And on one side, they're just drawing them on what we see on the outside. And then on the other side, they're sharing things about themselves that maybe are not as apparent when people are just looking on the outside. So they're able to share anything that's important to them that may not be a physical feature that's really easy to see. And then there's also the opportunity for students to share some writing about this. So I want you now to think about, and some of you have already started to do this, think about one ML student that you work with. And I want you to just jot down your response to these prompts. And you can see on the slide here, this is part one. Just want you to start thinking about one student, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity in part two to meet in a breakout room and discuss a little bit about these academic and non-academic strengths that you're recognizing in your students. So just think about these two prompts. What do you already know? And this could be either academic or non-academic. And then think about the second bullet. What don't you know yet that could really help you more fully understand the student? So maybe we'll take just a minute to jot these things down. And you can continue to think about that if you want. But what we're going to do is put you into some breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. I want you to think about your responses that you gave in the previous prompt. And then I want you to talk in your groups about which missing information you think is the most essential for planning instruction. So what you don't already know, information that you'd like to have, which is most essential. And then think about if you might be able to use a tool or a strategy, maybe one that I shared or another one that you already have, that could help you fill in some of that missing information. So I'm going to ask Jasmine to go ahead and open up our breakout rooms, and we'll spend about 5 minutes in there. All right, I think we have everybody back. I'm sure once you got into those breakout rooms, that 5 minutes flew, but I would like to invite somebody to share, and you can either unmute if you prefer, or you can kind of start dropping into the chat. Any key takeaways from your discussion? Anybody want to share a little bit about the conversation that you were having and some takeaways?
I can share.
Yeah, thanks.
I think there was a theme running through our breakout room discussion about really wanting to know a lot more about our students' primary language and their proficiency. And there were a few examples that we gave of upper grade learners who can do word recall, who can read anything, yet when the comprehension and the vocabulary, there's this breakdown. And so looking at their oral language and their proficiency in their native language is kind of something that we want to know more about L1. So
yeah, great. Anybody else want to share something? Either a takeaway or a step that you want to take. That was also kind of a step. You've kind of decided that you want to learn a little bit more about L1. So either a takeaway or a step you want to take to learn more.
I think many of us were in the same boat. We're all trying to explore things that we didn't know we were aware of, and it's also reassuring that we're all kind of in the same boat, that we're not alone. So that was kind of refreshing, listening to other people's stories.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, definitely something to be thinking about as we're moving along in the next part of the session. And I just wanted to share this one strategy. We often share this term here that we recommend teachers to be warm and informed demanders. So we have high expectations for our students. That's kind of like your demanding part, but we want to be informed. We want to know about the students. We want to make sure that what we're demanding is appropriate for the students in front of us. So, this is also continuing to hold high expectations for all students. Certainly we have the goals that are listed here. We want students to be independent learners. We want them to have greater autonomy, and we want them to have a positive academic mindset. We want them to think that they can achieve, to recognize that they can achieve and that they can be successful in school. So, while we have these high expectations, they also know that their teacher is somebody that they can count on to provide the support that they need. Okay, so let's shift over to talking about some research. So why is it so important that we have this research and research-based strategies for multilingual learners? One is the very realistic information that we have about student and teacher demographics. Like while our multilingual learner population is growing and our population of minority students is growing, the teacher workforce and the administrative workforce is predominantly white, non-Hispanic adults. So many students don't have an adult, maybe not in their classroom, maybe not even in their school, that they can really connect to in terms of their cultural background and their linguistic background. We also have information about significant gaps in students' educational opportunities and outcomes for multilingual learners in terms of graduation rates and success rates on standardized tests. So we really need to start, integrating some of these strategies that are really effective for multilingual learners, and that's where the professional learning comes in. And along with that, with the strategies, we also want to think about the social emotional needs of students, and we want to be able to bring in their culture and how we can connect their culture with what we're providing in the classroom. So to dig in a little bit more about the educational opportunities and outcomes for multilingual learners, as I was saying before, we know that on average, students, multilingual learners, scores on state assessments are below the national average. However, we also know that former multilingual learners, students who do manage to exit out of a language development program, tend to score higher than students who never participated in a program. And your Maine data speaks to that, which is really interesting. Students are typically underrepresented in honors and any kind of gifted programs. And we also know that they have lower graduation rates and inequities in student retention rates. I think the latest figure I saw was that, although our English learners make up about 10% of the population across the country, the national average for retention rate of multilingual learners is 14% of students. So something to take a look at there. So here is the national information around national graduation rates. And we can see that for all students, about 87% of the students graduate. But when we look at multilingual learners, students who are still learning English, it's about 72%. And that has been improving over the years, but still, a significant difference than when we're looking at all students. And then here, if you look at the graduation rates in Maine, unfortunately, the gap is a little bit bigger between all students and multilingual students. Only about 67.2% of students graduated, a four-year graduation, and this is from the 2024-2025 school year. And then again, if we look at the proficiency on state assessments, you can see in the first column, we have all students, and here on this slide, I'm looking at both ELA and math, and you can see all students in that sort of sea foam color is the students who are scoring at or above state expectations. And you can see all students, it's 63%, current multilingual learners, only 25%, but exited multilingual learners, 78% of them are scoring at or above state expectations. So I think that certainly tells us something as well in terms of what we need to provide to students and the kind of support we need to provide so that we can exit them out of the program and they can participate in general education classes. The numbers are a little bit closer in math, but still exited multilingual learners are just slightly ahead of the proficiency rate for all students. And of course, as I feel like I've mentioned several times already, culturally responsive teaching is going to play a significant role in helping students feel valued, helping them achieve success, and feel connected to the classroom. So we want to keep some of these important points in mind. We know that when students are able to feel connected to the classroom, they feel like they're in a safe environment, they're able to develop positive relationships, and all of this is going to help them focus more of their attention on their academic learning. So on this slide here, I am sharing some general research on effective instruction for multilingual learners. And there are 5 points here, some of them connected to some of the information that I shared a little bit earlier around our own view on an excellent multilingual education. We want students to be able to be building language and content knowledge together. We certainly see home language and any prior knowledge as assets, and we want to be able to leverage that in the classroom. Students need to be able to engage in productive interactions with their peers. So this is where that oral language piece is coming in. And they may need direct and explicit instruction, particularly on key aspects of literacy. And they need regular opportunities to develop written language skills. So these are 5 research-based strategies that have shown to be particularly effective with multilingual learners. And then I'm just sharing this slide here just to help you recognize that, in order for students to be able to achieve all of this, we're going to have to include some scaffolding depending on students' proficiency level. So scaffolding kind of goes across all of these strategies. In order for them to really be effective with students, we need to be thinking about how we're providing supports and how we're scaffolding. And that's certainly something that we're going to be talking about through this series. But what I'd like to do now is to give you an opportunity to look a little bit more into this research and think about how you might be connecting with some of the research. And we're going to do this through a jigsaw activity. So again, you're going to go into breakout rooms, and I'm going to ask you to pay attention to your breakout room number, because you are going to be working in document 5, which is actually a series of Google Slides. So you're going to need to find the slide that matches your breakout room number. Once you're there in your group, I want you to choose a recorder who's going to share their screen and be the note taker, and then a reporter who's going to be responsible for sharing out later when we all come back together. And you're going to read and discuss the linked research in the examples. And then I have a couple of questions in a graphic organizer on your slide, and I'll show you an example of that right here. So if you click right here, when you get to your Google slide, if you click right here in the middle, that will take you to the research on your topic. Okay, so then I want you to discuss it with your group, and you'll fill in this part using either words or images to summarize the key ideas. Maybe think about some examples of how to implement this, ways you already see this in your context. So maybe this is already happening. And then just begin thinking about how you can connect this research specifically to literacy and numeracy instruction. So are there any questions? All right, so I say let's open up the breakout rooms, and then you can hop onto document number 5 and start working with your group. All right, welcome back, everybody. I would like to invite somebody to share a takeaway from your discussion. I was able to scroll through the slides and see some of the work happening, but I'm sure that you all were discussing. So if there's anything anybody would like to share based on the research practice that you looked at.
Group 2, we were just like we were kind of really reading into what we were the passage and kind of trying to dissect it a little bit. We were just kind of breaking it all down, and then the breakout session happened. But we were talking a lot about ours was leveraging their home language, prior knowledge, and cultural assets. And we were talking a lot about supporting our students to use their home language as a bridge to understand, academic English content, celebrating their successes, even if they're going, they're trying to process in their home language, that's still a win for them. They're getting out their ideas and celebrating, their home language and making it known to them that, communicating with their peers who also speak the same language and encouraging that and supporting them is really important. So that's kind of where we were getting. I think it was a really great conversation to start. I think if we had a little more time, we probably could have gotten through the
There's never enough time.
Yeah.
We know that. There's never enough time.
Good stuff was coming for group 2. We were really, our wheels were turning.
Great. Glad to hear that. Is there another group, maybe one more group that wants to share?
I was in group, sorry.
Go ahead.
Group 1, and our topic was building content and language in tandem. And we had a couple of examples on how to do that, and that was just scaffolding using visuals and mini lessons on particular topics. And then we discussed how not to do that, which I think is kind of a common misconception, that by simplifying the content, it makes it easier for MLs to understand, but it also strips the content of that rich academic vocabulary that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really kind of just screamed through the material and summarized, and then we're able to throw some things down. But I agree that we need a little bit more time.
Yeah. Yes, that is definitely an important note for me to take away from this activity, is that we will need a little bit more time moving forward in the breakout room session. So I appreciate that comment as well. But yes, I love that you all were able to think about great ways to do that, but also think about things that probably are not the best thing to be doing to be able to support your students. And I also, again, just want to remind everybody that all of those materials will still be there. So even after the session, if you want to go back and read what some of your colleagues have put in to those Google Slides, you are welcome to do that. So as we're starting to think about what we know are just general good practices for multilingual learners, we also want to think about how all of this is going to connect specifically for literacy development and also for numeracy. So here on the slide, again, some of this at this point might start to sound a little bit repetitive to you, but these are, again, the things that we need to be thinking about as we're planning for strong literacy development for multilingual learners. We're going to need to include some scaffolding. We want that integration. So we're integrating language literacy and content learning. We want students to have opportunities to talk about what they're reading, what they're learning, what they're thinking, because that's all part of the processing for them, and also an opportunity for them to be developing language. We want to be leveraging their cultural and linguistic assets. Background knowledge is going to be really important. So we might need to activate or build some background knowledge because students may be coming with different types of background knowledge. We want to make sure that we're using a curriculum that's relevant and inclusive, that students can connect to. And we want to make sure that there is some writing instruction as part of the literacy program. And then switching over here to think a little bit about numeracy development. What really stands out here in this research is that, sometimes we find that multilingual learners have this math reasoning, but it may be the language that is making it difficult for them to express or show what they understand. And we need to keep in mind, as many of you have already pointed out, that math is a language-rich discipline. It is not just numbers. So we do need to think about how we're supporting students, what those language demands are that we're seeing, whether it's word problems or, whatever the instruction that we're providing. So we really need to be thinking about whether or not those language demands are a barrier to understanding the math. And this is another place where home language can really support mathematical thinking. If they can think through a problem in their home language, then that's great. And we just want to think about some ways that we can connect that to what we want them to be showing in English. Okay, so let's move into talking about second language acquisition, and we're going to dive into some of the resources that we have from WIDA. So here on this slide, you just have a general definition of language acquisition. Thinking about a non-primary language, like how students are developing a non-primary language, how they're creating that new language system within the limited exposure that they might have to a second language, and just thinking through how students kind of construct their own rules when they're learning a new language. And we probably see this a lot with students as they're experimenting with language, like they kind of internalize some things that they may think of as rules, and they use that and try it out and they adapt it. So that's a great thing to be seeing as students are learning language. There's been a lot of research and discussion and question about the rate of language acquisition. And what we understand now is that typically social language proficiency, students attain between 3 and 5 years. But when we talk about the academic English that students need for school and advanced education, that takes longer, typically 4 to 7 years. So let's just take a quick look at some of the stages of second language acquisition, like what we might expect at these different stages. So students who are beginners, you might have worked with students who are in the silent period, really reluctant to be trying anything. Then they might start repeating some phrases, producing short phrases, and they may be spending more time listening than speaking. And when we're thinking about the WIDA proficiency descriptors, we're typically talking about students who are at the entering or beginning levels there. And then when students move into the intermediate stage, they're speaking and writing and more complete, maybe expanding to some more complex sentences and phrases, learning more vocabulary, more fluent in social situations. But they do continue to need some support for academic language. So these are students who are typically in the area of developing and expanding. And then our advanced students really sound very fluent in all contexts, whether social or academic, make minimal errors, they might still have an accent. And these students are typically bridging or reaching. So I want to take just a minute and think about the MLs in your classes and share, where do you think they fall in the stages of language acquisition? And somebody asked the question, acquisition of non-primary language. So primary language might be like their home language or their first language that they learned. Okay, so I see some beginning and intermediate. Okay, a lot of, primarily in developing. Okay, lots of beginning, 3s, all levels. Okay, so you have students across the levels. Great, a lot of intermediates. Oh, and some newcomers. Okay, great. And then how can your understanding of second language acquisition inform your instruction? So if you have this understanding of what students might be doing at different levels of second language acquisition, how do you think that can inform your instruction? Okay, so you can match the scaffold to the content. You can know where to begin. It at least gives you a starting point. It informs scaffolds. You can focus on the next step. Great. Yeah. Okay. Great ideas. Okay, so let's take a look at some WIDA resources. And again, I'm getting the sense that a lot of you have some familiarity with WIDA, but just to kind of get a sense where we are, let's take a quick chat poll. And you can just drop the number in the chat that connects to your own familiarity with WIDA. I see a lot of 4s. Okay, you use the information in the resources. Great. A 3. So you've seen some score reports, haven't used too many tools. Oh, lots of 4s, 3s and 4s. Okay, so I do see a 2 in there. So great. So some of you may be familiar with some of the tools that I'm going to be sharing today, probably maybe even have used a lot of them, but let's take a look and see where we are. You probably already know that WIDA is a consortium. I think we're up to 43 states now. Very big news that finally, recently, New York has decided to join the WIDA consortium. They were always kind of out on their own, but they have joined WIDA. WIDA shares English language development standards framework, and along with that includes a lot of specific tools that teachers can use to plan for instruction. You all, I'm sure, are very familiar with the Access test, and that's where we get information around students' language proficiency levels. There's also instructional resources, and WIDA approaches everything from an assets-based approach. So they're thinking about what students can do and how we want to think about progressing them to the next level of language proficiency. So the tools that we're going to look at today very briefly are the ELD standards framework, a little bit about the proficiency level descriptors, and just a little quick overview on an Access score report. So let's take a look here about the WIDA ELD standards framework. And this really shows a lot of the resources that WIDA has available. So you see kind of on the outside those standard statements, and then within that, there are some descriptions of key language uses. So how students typically are expected to use language across contexts, across disciplines. There's some very regular, there are some types of language that they typically use. And thinking about that, then they have developed some language expectations, like how we want students to be using language to continue to drive content learning. And then there is a tool that we're going to look at a little bit more deeply, which are the proficiency level descriptors, which really is that continuum of language development. So what we might see students doing when they come in at a level 1 and on particular grade levels, how they might be building their language skills, moving across from a level 1 to a level 6. So here is a picture of the proficiency level descriptors. And as you can see along this column here in the criteria, when we're talking about how students are developing language, we're thinking about at the word level, so how they're using words, and then how their grammatical complexity is increasing in terms of sentences, and then even expanding beyond that into discourse. So the density of the language, their cohesion, and how they're organizing language as they're speaking. So here when we say at the top, you see end of the level, like this is what we might expect students to be doing at the end of level. And a tool like this can be really helpful to be thinking about, as many of you were saying, a starting point. Like I know that if my students are, a level 1.9, these are the types of things that they can be doing, but we also know where we want students to be going, what we might expect them to move into in the next level. And then I also think it's always helpful to take a look at an Access score report. I know ELD teachers often are able to take a look at these. Maybe they're not always shared with content teachers, but it's important to notice that students do receive a score in each of the domains, and that maps to a proficiency level. But then we also have at the bottom here this overall or a composite score. And oftentimes when teachers talk about the level that their student is, they're often talking about this score. But it's important to take a look at these language domains because, while we're saying the student is a 3.6, we can see up here that their speaking score is a 2.5, so a little bit lower. So the supports and the work that we might want to do to bring this student into the next proficiency level might be a little bit different, what they're going to need in different language domains. And then also helpful to think about, this really kind of maps out what I was just saying, like if we know the proficiency level that the students are in each of these domains, we know what they generally can do. So this should really kind of map to those proficiency level descriptors and can also help you think about, as you're planning instruction, what you already know that these students can do at these levels. So I want to give you an opportunity to dig into those proficiency level descriptors a little bit more. So this time, we're going to meet in breakout rooms with grade level peers. And in order to do that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jasmine, but in order to do that, this time you're going to select, this is going to be a self-selected breakout room. So when the breakout rooms open, you'll see different grade levels for the options. So just choose a breakout room that matches your grade level. And then you're going to go into document 6, again, a series of Google Slides, and find one that matches your grade level cluster, because I want you to take a look at those proficiency level descriptors. So again, you'll choose a recorder and a reporter. You'll discuss those descriptors, and then there's some questions on the slide. And let me show you what the slide looks like. So if you're a kindergarten teacher, for example, you'll find a slide that says grade level K. When you go into the slides, if you click here, the one that's underlined, it will take you to the kindergarten proficiency level descriptors. And then I want you to take a look at those and then just respond to these questions, your initial reaction to them, what you notice about how language grows from level 1 to level 6, and then how you can use that information from a student's access report along with this proficiency level descriptors to plan for instruction. And again, I know time is probably not going to be as much as you would like. So I certainly would say, put a great value on the discussion, like really, look at those proficiency level descriptors, take some time to discuss with your group. And then if you get to filling in some of these responses, that's great. And if not, we'll just, as a group, share some takeaways. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Is there anybody who wants to share a little bit about your takeaways from going through this? And, you can address one of the questions maybe that your group talked about, or maybe share a little bit about your own discussion that you had.
Okay, I think I'm going to go with this time. In my second and third grade group, it was like the different part of accommodation and, in terms of the language, and they go home and they speak a different language. So when they come back the next day, they have to start all over again learning English. Although they have already something, so they can build up on the other part that they were having the day before or something. So the prior knowledge. And I feel that, I'm going to use I because that's how I feel. If I can speak French, if I can have Spanish, if I can have all those languages that they are speaking, then I can explain easily to them, but they have to get explanation in a language that they are still learning.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that difficulties. And second and third graders, I mean, you know, what are their capacities? So I feel that they're working so hard that I must give them credit for being able to come to school every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because as an adult, and I speak 4 different languages, that's including English. But the learning of English, even as an adult here, it was like so difficult for me. And right now, if I can speak all those languages that the students are speaking, I would be able to get them to be successful in no time at all. So I'm putting the blame on myself that I have to explain to them in a language that they are still learning. It's the hardest part to figure out. How am I going to rephrase this to make them understand?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and that's really essentially the work that we're doing, right? We're trying to provide something in a way, like recognizing that, you know, even when we give what we think are maybe simple directions, recognizing that, you know, for a lot of our students, it's not necessarily simple. We really need to make sure that we're, you know, providing what they need in a way that it's going to be accessible to them.
right. And for them to learn without being embarrassed that they can do different things if it's instructed in different languages, but we're asking them to fulfill something in a language that they are still learning. That's
Right.
where I feel very, empathetic to them. So, okay.
Yeah. And I think that's also a message that we're trying to get across when we think about, you know, maybe some like standardized assessments, or when we're talking maybe with colleagues who sometimes tell us that scaffolding or, you know, other supports that we are providing are unfair. You know, we have to think about exactly this, is that they're trying to show what they understand about this content in a language that they're still learning. So, you know, to expect that, you know, their response is going to look exactly like a student who knows this language and knows school and understands school in the United States, that's a very different experience and very different expectation. So yeah, you're doing great work out there to get that across to students. Anybody else want to share any insights you gained around how multilingual learners are using and developing language, or how this might impact the way you're thinking about lessons moving forward, how you might kind of put this tool together with, you know, any other tools that you're using, maybe your access scores?
In our kindergarten group, we talked about how some of like the upper standards, like the 5 and the 6, are things that we want all kindergartners to be able to do, not just ML students.
Yeah, great. And that's good. That's great to know too, that it's something that all the students can be working towards. Right. Okay. I am just kind of also keeping an eye on the time. So I am going to move on to sort of the last part of our session, which is starting to think about how we're going to apply some of our learning today. And I know that Melanie shared through her communication with you that in between sessions, there would be some kind of an interim activity. So really what I want you to be thinking about between now and the next session is, you know, this information that you are gathering about students in terms of their non-academic and then their access scores. And, you know, kind of like, is this connecting with what you're seeing in the classroom? Or is this just, you know, like a number that's a score? We want to put some meaning behind it so that we're really sure that we're providing instruction that's exactly what the students in front of us need. So here are the 4 steps, and then I'm going to show you a couple of slides that sort of connect to each of these steps. And I also just want to point out that it does say document 2 on here. In the Google folder, document 2 is the agenda, but also on the bottom of the agenda, it also lists these steps so you can remember what you need to do. So one, I do want you to gather, if you don't already have it, some non-academic information. And then these are the tools and strategies that we looked at today. You might choose to use one of these. You don't have to if you have something else that you use. But if something struck you today and you want to try it out, by all means, go right ahead and do that. And then I have in the Google folder this document number 7, and I want you to just gather proficiency levels. So if you have access scores for students, just kind of gather that information and note it here on this chart. So for example, any student who scores a 1 in listening, you would put their name right in this box. And then there's a row for each of the language domains. And then you also have this space for any notes about what you're noticing in class. So maybe, for example, you have a student who scores a 1 in listening, which indicates that their listening is very low, but you're noticing something different in class. Or students are scoring very high and you're noticing that this, completely connects to what might be expected during, for students who have that particular score. So that's actually number 3, is making observations. So jot down some brief notes, and you can compare those observations with what you're seeing on the proficiency level descriptors. So what do we know based on these proficiency level descriptors about what students can do when they're a level 2 in speaking? And what am I noticing in the classroom? So we're kind of trying to see if those proficiency level descriptors and what students are actually doing in the classroom kind of align. So there's where you can put your notes. And then the final thing that I want you to do is to share your reflection on the Padlet. And this is the one thing I was mentioning before, where I want people to be able to have access to the Padlet. So, based on what you collected around this information, just share a short reflection. And you can consider these questions, like maybe there's some insights that you gained about their strengths and needs. You can think about how these insights will impact the way you plan instruction for multilingual learners moving forward. Maybe you already have some ideas around some specific supports that you think your multilingual learners are going to need to grow their language and access to content. So if you haven't done this type of activity on Padlet before, all you need to do is go to this column, you click on the plus sign, and a little box will show up. You can just type in your name, and then you can type in your reflection. So I was kind of hoping that we might get started on this today. Given that it's already 4:50, I don't think that we have a lot of time for that. But I do want to sort of encourage people to really review the session materials and think about how some of those materials can support you in thinking through how you're going to handle this interim activity and how you might work on your response.
Hi, Mindy. It's
Yeah.
Melanie. There's
Yes.
a question in the chat.
Oh, great.
If you could just take a peek at that.
Sure. The access score, this one, no, about a year. Oh yeah, are we trying to notice how they have grown since then? That certainly could be an observation that you make. Yeah, we are at this time of year where, do you all give the access test in January? Yeah, so that certainly is something that you can be noting. That would be a great thing to note, in fact, that their access score is, like, a student is falling in a particular place. But what you're noticing in the classroom is that they're doing, a whole lot more. Maybe they're matching more to the next level, or even in a level beyond that. And then it'll be really great for you all to see what their new access scores are. So really the goal of the activity is kind of to see, like, how we're mapping, what we have as this sort of summative assessment. Like, this is, and again, this is such an important point that you're making, that these scores are almost a year old, but this is the score that we typically work with. We come in at the beginning of the year and this is the information that we have, and we're kind of building on that. So it will be really great for you to see, what kind of activity, what kind of interaction, what kind of engagement you are seeing in the classroom, and whether or not that does map to the proficiency level that you currently have.
So Mindy, I
Yes.
don't know if you guys saw my comment, but so pre-K kindergarten students would only have their pre-K or kindergarten screener scores.
Right.
We
Right.
don't have any access.
Okay.
Just whatever they were screened at, which can be very different from where they're at even. I mean, so just go.
Yeah, so I think for you, what's going to be really important is your observation. So maybe it's just making those notes, really noting. And I would just want to think about, like, what are you noting in the different language domains? What are you noticing about speaking? What are you noticing about listening? That kind of thing. So I think your observations are going to be really important.
And I've had many of you reach out and said, gee, should I even participate? I'm just really glad you're here still, because the fact that you might not have one in front of you today does not mean you won't have one tomorrow. So just still glad you're here.
Yes. And I think also becoming a little bit familiar with some of these documents and some of these tools is going to be really helpful if you do have students coming in at any point. Mm-hmm. So any other questions that I can answer right now about that? No grades. Yeah, right. I was going to say, this is not graded. There will be no grading.
Hi, I'd like to ask questions that my EdTech asked about me. That is, we have been doing access test for a couple of years. But I wonder if there's a way that WIDA can collect all the feedbacks from the testing, or there's a training that we can talk about how effective this testing is. Because some of them, if they feel like maybe like some questions is too long, especially for like pre-K or first grade, the listening test or speaking test in direction is too long, or they can't focus, or it's just it's really nice if we can have the way to give back these feedbacks.
We certainly really appreciate that feedback. And Mindy, I don't mean to cut you off. As a state prescribed into the WIDA consortium, we are constantly taking feedback to WIDA and to their different committees that they have. And so if you have feedback just like that, it'd be really grateful for you to send us an email here at the state or at the Maine Department of Education. That is something that we take directly back to WIDA. So our working group has a meeting with WIDA every month to discuss any concerns. We have a WIDA as a case manager, so to speak, Jane, that takes our concerns directly to WIDA. And so we also, as a team, go and meet with WIDA twice a year and on different subcommittees. So we appreciate that very much so. And I'm sure Support Ed hears very similar things across the many states they work with as well. So please send us an email here at the department, and Jane and I can pop our emails right into the chat, so you can send that our way. And Jane also put in the Building a WIDA Assessment tool into the chat.
So just to kind of wrap up for today, if anybody wants to share a quick reflection, anything that shifted in your thinking today, or one action that you feel ready to try. And again, I'll invite you to either just unmute and share, or you can drop in the chat if you'd like.
I'm looking forward to actually using some of these documents to chart where my students are, what their skills are, where I need to take them next. But one of the pieces I know I'm missing, well, there's lots of pieces, but data collection from the classroom teacher and from the district level. What I mean by that is like their bar, all of that information I don't have access to. And hopefully
we will ask you to complete an app.
Sorry,
maybe that's okay. Maybe use some of this is to help develop more progress monitoring.
Yeah. I'm actually, when somebody was mentioning something about how you have old access scores, I was making that connection to progress monitoring, like noticing where students are. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we are in like our last 2 minutes, and I do want to honor everybody's time and get people off of this session on time. Please feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'm also going to have put my email up right at the very end. You all have my email since I've sent an email to you. Please feel free to email me anytime in between the sessions. If you have a question, if there's anything you can't access, if you want a little bit more guidance, no problem at all. We will meet again on February 24th at 3 o'clock. Again, really the only next step is for you to complete that interim activity. My email is right there. And the final thing that I am going to ask you to do, though, is to complete an evaluation for today's session. I really do read all of these. I really appreciate all of your feedback. And, we'll do whatever I can to incorporate any of your suggestions or your needs into the next session. So that is included in the Google folder. If you're able to access the bit.ly, you can always also access it that way. And I'm sure Jasmine is one step ahead of me and has dropped it into the chat. So thank you for that. I
kept getting kicked off and on. How do I access the folder?
Eileen, I can certainly send an email out after this call with a connection directly to the Padlet and just a reminder about our next week's date. So please look forward that from me by tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much to our friends at Support Ed, Mindy and Jasmine, for being here to facilitate this today. We are so thankful that we were able to utilize some Title IV funds to bring Support Ed to all of our counties in Maine. And so I will certainly stay on this call for just a few moments if you have questions. If not, please stay warm on this very chilly, windy day in Maine. In northern Maine, it's especially windy. And so we wish you all also a great February break, because we'll be seeing you directly after that. And reach out in the meantime. Reach out to me if you have Zoom questions, attendance, and please reach out to Mindy if you have any content questions. So thank you so much for everybody. And we will see you all next month.